As the soft glow of early morning spilled through the large windows, Jungkook emerged from his state-of-the-art home gym, his sculptured physique and fierce aura commanding attention. Dressed in nothing but a pair of sweatpants, he wiped the remains of his intense workout from his forehead and approached the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the expensive, heavily secured estate. The tranquility of the early hours was broken by the sound of footsteps echoing against the polished hardwood floors as he made his way towards the kitchen. Despite his fearsome reputation, he harbored a secret affection for the early morning, relishing in the solitude they provided before his underworld empire demanded his undivided attention. As he entered the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee greeted him, his eyes landing on the woman standing in front of the counter, her slender frame and delicate hands stirring the pot. Despite the fear that often lingered in her eyes, there was an innocence about her that intrigued him, a vulnerability that seemed to draw him in against all logic. He leaned against the kitchen doorway, his gaze locked on her slender back. As he crossed his arms over his chest, Jungkook, you are up early, he observed, his voice deep, breaking the fire. She jumps a little at the sound of his voice, her heart fluttering in her chest. She turned to face him, her eyes widening at the sight of him, his chest glistening with the fine sheen of perspiration, his muscular form almost impossible to ignore. When I couldn't sleep, she replies, her voice small and low, her eyes flickering away from his intense gaze. She busies herself with pouring the coffee, hoping he won't notice the way her hand trembling slightly. He hummed. His hum of acknowledgement sends a shiver down Wine's spine. His command causing her breath to hit. Jungkook, bring the coffee to my room. He instructs, his eyes never leaving her, as he turns to leave the kitchen. As she nods silently and grabs the coffee, her pulse quickens, the fear she feels towards him taking hold. Despite his apparent nonchalance, she can't shake the feeling of trepidation that always lingers in his presence. Gathering her courage, she follows him wordlessly towards his room. As she enters the room, she is instantly hit with the distant scent of his cologne. The room is spacious and lavish, with expansive windows offering a panoramic view of the grounds. The king-size bed is dominating the room, its black silk sheets a stark contrast against the white walls. She placed the coffee on the nightstand and stepped back, her body tense as she waits his next move. As she finishes placing the coffee on the nightstand, she sends his eyes on her. He glances at her and commands with a calm yet commanding tone, Jungkook, come here. With her heart racing, she hesitates for a moment before slowly taking a few steps forward. Her eyes cast down, avoiding his intense gaze. She stops a few feet away from him, her hands fighting nervously at her side. He studies her silently, his expression unreadable. He can sense her fear, the tremble in her hands, the way her breath hitches in her chest. Despite her obvious trepidation, she has obeyed his command, and that fact stirs something within him. Seeing her nervous demeanor, he takes a step toward her, his eyes locking with hers. Jungkook, why are you so afraid of me? He asks, his voice cutting through the silence of the room. The intensity of his gaze makes her shrink back, her heart hammering in her chest. I don't know, she stammers, her voice barely more than a whisper. She figures under his scrutiny, her eyes darting away from his probing gaze. He takes another step closer, now standing directly in front of her. His eyes roam over her face, taking in her features, the quick flutter of her eyelashes, the flush creeping up her neck. He reaches out and takes her chin gently in his hand, tilting her face upwards to meet his gaze directly. Jungkook, look at me, he orders, his voice low and controlled. His thumb grazes her bottom lip, the touch sending a shiver down her spine. She looks up at him, her eyes wide and vulnerable. Jungkook, tell me, he begins, his fingers still lightly holding her chin. Why do you flinch every time I come near you? Why do your eyes fill with fear each time you see me? His gaze never wavers. Why? I can, she replied, her voice trembling, her body tensing as he gets closer. It's just, I can't, I'm sorry, she finally utters, her voice barely above a whisper, looking down at her trembling hands. He lets out a sigh, his grip on her chin loosening slightly. Jungkook, did I ever shout at you? Did I ever say anything cruel? He gently lifts her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. Have I ever given you a reason to be scared of me? She averts her eyes, looking anywhere but at him. Her heart pounds in her ears as she fumbles for an answer. When, no, she finally managed to say, her voice barely louder than a whisper. No, you have not, but she trails off, her voice choked with emotion. Jungkook, but what? You're afraid because I'm a mafia. He releases her chin and take a step back. Is that it? You're scared of me because I'm a mafia lord? He asks. She nods silently, her eyes still averted, her body taut with tension. Wine, yes, she murmurs, her voice barely audible. Jungkook, and you think that every man in the mafia is some heartless monster who enjoys causing pain? He asks. Wine, I don't know, she stirred, her voice cracking, her eyes flickering up to his face, then quickly dart away again, avoiding his intense gaze. He studies her for a moment, his eyes never leaving her face. Jungkook, alright, he relents, his voice softer now. I admit it, I am not sane. I have done things that would make you shiver. But for you, he pauses, his gaze lingering on her, his expression unreadable. For you, I am just a normal man who have a heart. His words send a shiver down her spine, her breath hitching in her chest. She looks up at him, her eyes wide and filled with a mixture of fear and something else, something she can't quite name. She can see the darkness lurking behind his cool exterior, the ruthlessness that she knows lies beneath the surface. It should terrify her, but something about the way he is looking at her makes her heart flutter against her will. He steps forward again, closing the distance between them. His eyes lock onto hers, his voice surprisingly sincere. Jungkook, I have done horrible things in my life, he says, his hand reaching out to gently touch her cheek. Things I am not proud of, but for you, a pause. His finger tracing a path down her jawline. For you, I am not a mafia. And his touch lingers on her cheek. Memories of her toxic act flowed her mind, like a tidal wave, her body trembling involuntarily. The scars of her past relationship run deep, leaving her fearful and guarded. His proximity, his touch, it all triggers a primal fear within her. He notices her trembling and can see the haunted look in her eyes. He knows she is thinking about her ex, the one who hurt her so deeply. He waits for a moment, giving her time to collect herself before gently resuming. His voice softer now. Jungkook, I know you have been hurt before by someone who doesn't deserve even an ounce of your time, but I am not him. He takes another step closer, his hand still on her cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle. Jungkook, I am not going to abuse you or take advantage of your fears. His eyes pour into hers, trying to convey the sincerity behind his words. I am not going to be like him. Jungkook, I can see the way you flinch when I come near you. He continues, his thumb tracing a gentle pattern on her skin. I see the fear in your eyes. He pauses, his gaze locking onto hers. But I promise I won't hurt you. I won't let anyone else hurt you. You will be safe with me. His words are earnest, his tone genuine. Despite the rough exterior, the hardened persona of a mafia lord, there is a tenderness in his voice, a protectiveness that speaks louder than any threat ever could. Jungkook, I love you. The words spill out, raw and unrehearsed, his voice low and heavy with emotion. He says it with such conviction, as if confessing a secret he's been holding. He takes a step closer, his body mere inches away from hers now. Jungkook, I never thought I would feel this way about anyone. He confesses, his hand moving to cup her cheek gently. But you are different. He brushes a strand of hair away from her face, his touch feather light. Jungkook, I love you, Ryan. He repeats, his voice a low, earnest murmur. Despite everything, I love you. Jungkook, I know I am not perfect, he admits, his eyes searching hers. I know I am far from being the kind of man you deserve, but I can't help how I feel. His hand moves to the small of her back, drawing her close. Jungkook, I promise to protect you, he whispered, his voice a deep rumble that vibrates through her body. I promise to take care of you. He bends his head, his lips hovering just above her. If you will let me, I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Her voice trembles as she speaks, her pain evident in each word. Vine, I can't be in a relationship right now, she managed to say, her eyes filled with fear and pain. My experience with relationships has been too bad. I can't handle being hurt again. She averts her gaze, her body trembling as the memories flood back. Vine, I can't trust men, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't trust anyone. I'm too scared of getting hurt again. Her eyes glisten with unshed tears as she looks up at him, her expression vulnerable. Vine, I'm sorry, master, she chokes out. But I can't do it. I can't take the chance of being hurt again. It's too much. It will destroy me. He takes her face in his hand, gently tilting it up to meet his gaze. Jungkook, please, he pleads, his voice taut with emotion. Just give me one chance. Let me prove to you how much I love you. I know I can't change what happened in the past, how you got hurt. And the person who hurt you is not in this world to hurt anyone now. But I can promise you that I will never let anyone hurt you again. I'll protect you with my life. Her eyes widen in shock as his words register. When? What do you mean? He's not in this world now. He runs his finger through her hair. His touch gentle yet firm. Jungkook, relax, he murmurs, his eyes never leaving her. I did what I had to do. He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore, or anyone else for that matter. His tone is cool, as if confessing to a necessary deed. Jungkook, I took care of it, he says, his hand moving to cup her face. He's no longer a threat. You don't have to be afraid of him anymore. She stares up at him, her eyes filling with tears, her emotions swirling chaotically. His confession, the matter of fact tone with which he spoke of taking care of the person who hurt her. It's all too much to process. She can see the flicker of determination in his eyes, the resolute set of his jaw, and it frightens her as much as it reassures her. Jungkook, just one chance, he breathed, holding her face in his hand. Please just give me one chance. If I don't prove it to you, if I can't make you see how much I love you, how much I want to protect you, I'll be back off, I promise. She looks up at him, her heart racing, her mind a chaotic whirl of fear and hope. She sees the intensity in his eyes, the sincerity in his voice, and she wants to believe him, wants to trust him, but the fear of being hurt again, it's a deep rooted, primal fear that grips her heart. One chance, she whispered, her voice so quiet she is not sure he heard her. But he did hear her, and his grip on her face tightened slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. He lets out a breath that's somewhere between a sigh and a relief. Jungkook, one chance, he confirms, his voice low and rough. I'll prove it to you, I won't let you down. She gazes into his eyes, searching for any sign of deceit, but she finds nothing but sincere determination staring back at her. She takes a deep breath. Fine, okay. She nods slowly, her voice shaky. One chance. His eyes light up at her words. He lowers his head, his lips hovering just above her, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. Jungkook, you won't regret it, he promises, his breath warm against her skin. She trembles as his lips move to her cheek, his words like a gentle, warm caress against her skin. Her heart races in her chest, a flurry of emotion crashing through her like a storm. Part of her is afraid, afraid of being hurt again, but she can't deny the powerful pull of his presence, the protective desire that emanates from him, wrapping around her like a safe haven. Mine, I hope you're right, she whispers, her voice quivering. I hope I won't regret it. He pulls her closer, his arm encircling her, holding her tight against him. He lowers his head to her forehead, his lip brushing against her skin gently, almost reverently. Jungkook, you won't regret it, he murmurs, his voice a low rumble. His embrace tightens slightly, his body enveloping her, a cocoon of warmth and security. Slowly, tentatively, she lifts her arms and wraps them around him, her body molding against his. Her grip is light at first, her muscles taut with uncertainty, but as she feels the beat of his heart against her, the solidity of his presence against her, she relaxes into his embrace, her arms wrapping around him more firmly, her head resting against his chest.